What's up, everyone? I hope you all are having a blessed and wonderful day today. Today, this video is going to be a bit different, right? We're going to be talking about why Midnight Suns has the possibility of being a good game, a great game even, why it being a turn-based strategy game, it shouldn't turn you away, and why a turn-based aspect could be a good change of pace. So going about 9 months ago, right, all the way back to August 25th, the world reveal of Midnight Suns was officially shown to the public, and it had some very extreme mixed reactions in many different ways. On the good side, we got to see some characters who aren't really represented as much outside of comics, such as Sister Grimm and Robbie Reyes and Blade, and then the casual Marvel fans got to see some household names like Iron Man and Doctor Strange, which I'm more than sure grabbed their attention and pulled them into the game. This is also the first Marvel game in a while that featured mutants as main characters, and when I say, I mean as in main characters who actually have a role in the plot and are there for a specific reason. Ultimate Alliance does not count. That is a crossover. It does not count. This is also one of the only Marvel games, if not the only Marvel game, that deals heavily with the supernatural side of Marvel, so to say, right? Everything that I just listed here were the things that I was seeing Midnight Suns catch praise for. The negative side of that, however, was more so based on a few things like it having a card-based system or it not following any of the original Midnight Suns story arcs. And I'm going to say this, I'm going to be completely honest. Half of the people that are dying on that storyline argument has never read any of the runs for that team. All they know is the comic roster lineup that they did a quick Google search for, and their information stops there. Let's be honest. So the birth of Midnight Suns initially started when Firaxis was finishing up work on XCOM 2 War of the Chosen, and Marvel decided to contact 2K and ask for Firaxis specifically to see if they wanted to make a game in the Marvel Universe because they were fans of the XCOM series. Now, they said yes almost instantly, and Marvel was pretty much open to all of the various ideas that was placed on the table. They wanted to try something different, and they decided to go to a company who knew exactly what they were doing. This wasn't a scenario where, oh, you have to have this character in game, or you have to make this storyline this exact way, and you can't have this certain character be a villain. It was none of that, right? It was free reign to create their own mark on one of the biggest IPs in the world, and that's exactly what they set out to do, and by golly, they're doing it. Now, Firaxis is a company that made XCOM, one of the most known and best turn-based games in the past decade. This is a company that knows exactly what they're doing, but during development, they ended up having to chuck all of that out the window. Now, the game was initially going to be XCOM with Marvel heroes until they noticed that this cannot work. The system they normally use for XCOM couldn't support the vision that they had for Midnight Suns. The theme and mechanics did not match up at all, so they had to go back to the drawing board. They made an entirely new system, and the card aspect, which became a major part, was inspired by another game known as Slay the Spire, a game that they were all playing at the time of developing the game. Now, the card aspect was important because one simple thing ended up solving so many problems that either didn't have many fixes or there were no easy fixes to begin with, because they for sure tried out multiple options. After deciding that cards was the best course of action, they moved further into development. The gameplay that we all have seen so far has the stamp of being simple yet deep due to how intuitive the system can be. For example, the randomness that kicks in during gameplay. You can essentially break down a turn into three parts, which is a game state, decision, result. The randomness factor in Midnight Suns is known as input randomness, where the random factor comes in before the players make a decision, and then the players act on the available information, and then at that point it becomes a fixed choice, so you know what's going to happen going forward. The gameplay loop can continue because it's ever changing and is relying on how you respond to it instead of following a linear path, which further helps support the replayability aspect because it's something that you can keep coming back to turn-based genre as a whole has some hard hurdles to overcome because people tend to dislike the game at the very mention of turn-based combat. For Midnight Suns, however, this case is much worse because of the genre turn-based games are tapping into. Marvel games usually include the likes of action-packed thrill rides like X-Men Origins Wolverine, Spider-Man PS4, Ultimate Alliance, and more. Players have that need to want to project themselves onto the character that they're playing as if they are the hero themselves. The fast-paced, high-flying action that they can find in other games cannot be found in Midnight Suns in the same portion, but that's okay because these games are not for everyone. But simply writing the game off because it has a card system, especially one that you've never played or tried out before, I would say is extremely wild. Games like Persona, Fire Emblem, the South Park series, and even to some extent, games you played as a kid, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Chaotic, and more are all turn-based. If you are willing to give any of those a try just for the sake of it, you should be willing to do the same for Midnight Suns. I'll use Spider-Man PS4 as an example. People play that game because of their love for the character. They can have a blast swinging around fighting crime because they see this new take on Spidey. Their love and admiration grows for the character the more they play, and while also seeing themselves in the character and connecting with him and what he's going through. Now in Midnight Suns, you are still able to do that, seeing yourself in the character, learning more about this version, and coming to love him, but to a much deeper extent. But because instead of just imagining yourself in his shoes, you can actually bond and connect with the character, becoming buddies, best friends, or even rivals depending on how you choose to interact with him. Hanging out with him when you're not off saving the world and getting to know him more, but you still have that option regardless. The relationships that you can build in the friendship system comes from games like Persona and Fire Emblem because the game was inspired by these other JRPGs. Simply saying you hate it because of the card system is a cop-out to me, and I feel like you would be robbing yourself of a possible enjoyous experience, right? If you're not interested, that's fine, but at least have an actual reason for why you're not. For one of our upcoming Marvel games to be turn-based, I was extremely happy about it, right? I've been a fan of Midnight Suns since day one. There is no cap in my rap, good sir. I have absolutely no reason to lie. Now, I'm not going to sugarcoat anything, but I also won't be too blunt. The past 3 Marvel games that I've been playing, and this is based on my current feelings towards them, I enjoyed 2 out of 3 of them. Marvel Snap is honestly a lot of fun for me, and I play it on my off time. Guardians is still up there with my favorite superhero games of all time, right next to Arkham Origins and X-Men. And Avengers has its issues that we don't need to talk no more about that. Now, if I were to bring up a list of Marvel games from the past decade, right, on hand, I can name 5 games that all were the exact same in execution. The Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2, Deadpool, Thor, and X-Men Destiny. See a pattern here? All of these games were action beat-em-ups followed by a overarching story. A lot of these are pretty much the same game with a different hero and story attached to it. From the years 2010 to 2019, 31 of 59 Marvel games that were released over all platforms were strictly crossovers. 40 games out of Marvel's entire video game catalog all belong to Spider-Man specifically. Midnight Suns is the first game to use its namesake's property and is one of the only, if not the only, console turn-based Marvel game, which is a wonderful change of pace because let's be honest, how many times can you beat Spider-Man PS4 before you get tired? I'm pretty sure you can knock out Miles Morales in like 6 hours. Like, come on, that's not enough. But before we end this, I'm gonna leave you with this, right? The perfect example. Due to Avengers' performance, people were insanely worried about how Guardians of the Galaxy were gonna perform because they were afraid that Eidos Montreal would mimic the bad choices that Crystal ended up making. But the game released and it ended up being one of the best superhero games of all time, right after Red Arkham City. The point here that I'm trying to make was to not let the game throw you off, not to let how it looks throw you off, because for all you know, Midnight Suns could very well pull a Persona move and take your heart. Next thing you know, you're telling everybody else to try out the game just like us. So with all that being said, this video is going to be coming to a close. I hope you guys had a great time here. If you've agreed with anything I said, let me know down in the comments below how you feel. Let's go ahead. Let's start a conversation. Remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button and hit that notifications bell so that you can stay posted on whenever my videos go up, especially my Midnight Suns related ones, and I will catch you guys in the moonlight. Peace.